Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the next in the series of Driving Sustainable Change. Joining me today is Zoe Binning. Zoe is the Welsh wedding business and sustainability consultant, co-founder of Wild Roots Kitchen and Bar and Green Manatee. Zoe is joining us and she's going to talk to us about the Welsh market, what's happening in sustainability there, and what is going to be happening in the future, hopefully. So Zoe, over to you. Tell us a bit about yourself and each one of your fantastic businesses.
Yeah, okay, hey. So initially I'm a wedding business consultant. My background is wedding planning. I was a wedding planner for a number of years. I also have always subcontracted to wedding venues and run weddings on their behalf. And that sort of naturally moved into consultancy. And now I don't really plan, well, nobody does weddings at the moment, do they? But even when we can, I don't really do weddings so much now. I don't plan weddings anymore. I work on this side of my business purely with venues and with others, and with other wedding suppliers as well. So looking at the ways in which they can move their businesses forward. The Welsh market is quite different than over the border. So, that's, I grew up in Bristol. I was born here. I grew up in Bristol and I moved back about 20 years ago. So I've worked in the Welsh wedding industry for a long time. So I do understand the nuances of that. And I've also over the last however many years, my sort of concern and nervousness and I guess panic, if you like, with the lack of sustainability, the sort of lack of eco-friendliness in generally, but particularly in the wedding industry, has sort of grown and grown, and it got to the stage where it was just, I guess I struggled with it too much to realise I needed to do. I either needed to get out or to do something about it. And whilst getting out would have probably been the easier option, I didn't go with that. So it was all about doing something with it instead, and trying to sort of help and develop it, and to help others to understand it a bit more, I guess. And that's really how my other businesses have come about. So Wild Roots, initially it was created as a wedding catering and events, caterer. Partly because when I run weddings for venues, we have to bring in external caterers. The service varies, the front of house service varies, the quality of the food varies inevitably. And I think for venues that are maybe smaller or maybe multifaceted, do a number of different things, aren't really focused solely on weddings or have experience necessarily solely of weddings. They don't really know what they need to do. And so as a result, bringing in a sort of a white label catering service is a way for us to manage the process, do it in-house, but without the risk from the venue's point of view. So that's kind of how that came about. It is my plan with that, or we're working towards becoming carbon negative, which we, obviously with the weddings not really being a thing, we've done a lot more corporate catering. We're working with a lot of corporates, and we also do private stuff, But I think from corporate's point of view, that kind of corporate social responsibility element is something that is obviously a lot more important, but they don't really know how to start. They don't really know how to go about it in some cases. So it kind of translates across corporate and weddings and events and just everything really. So that kind of came about as a result of that. We are working towards being completely plastic free, which for catering is a challenge. Catering is not known as being sustainable. There's very much a sort of a throw it away mentality, inevitably with food, but with everything, with the packaging, with everything. So that is a challenge, and that's something we've been working hard on. And then equally, my business then, Green Manatee, was born out of running weddings and seeing, or being the person trawling in trolley loads of kind of plastic tat in the morning that largely didn't, it was cheap, it largely didn't last the day, and I was kind of then sort of pushing it out at the end of the night and putting it straight in the bin. Mostly it wasn't recyclable, mostly it wasn't fit for purpose, mostly it was pretty glittery and sort of unsustainable and just unrecyclable. And we basically realized that we had to do it better. So the argument was, you can either, obviously the most eco-friendly wedding you can possibly have is to not do anything. But at the end of the day, let's be realistic. It's still got to be a special day. It's still got to be fun. It's still got to be beautiful. There's no, you can be as good as you want to be, but you got to be realistic. And if that is the case, then what's to say that those realistic choices can't still be better choices? And that is something that we've been working really hard on. So we're actually launching in 18th of June. We are launching. Now I've said it in public, I have to commit to it. But what we're looking to do is, so it's an online wedding gifts and wedding favours business, but everything will be plastic free. It will be, if each product doesn't have a sort of a use after its day, it will either be recyclable but properly and come from recycled, it'll be compostable, whatever it will be. Every element of it is thought through, from the packaging, from the labels, which is our current challenge, to the use after that day, and trying to get couples to look at doing things in a more sustainable way without feeling that it's got to be twine and craft paper. And you can still have an elegant, beautiful wedding, but be a bit kinder to the environment and to yourselves and to your guests, in the process.
So you say there, twine and barns, and that perception that I think a lot of couples have about sustainability and what a sustainable wedding might look like and might mean. Yeah. Have you seen a shift in mindset from the couples that you're working with and the businesses you're working with over the last 2 years, 18 months?
Yes, I have, definitely. Not as much as I feel we should have done. In no way close to where I feel we should have done, what I feel we should have done. Hence, really, why this is a bit of a project, a passion project in that respect, as well as obviously a definite need to really ramp it up, because we're not close. We're not even remotely close. Yes, people are being more aware. They're thinking through a little bit more. The problem, I think, is when you get close to that wedding day and you get sort of Pinterest and Instagram, and you get a sort of your friends' weddings and what they've done. There is an element still of, keeping up with the Joneses, just in Wales, I suppose, and sort of being more Instagrammable and being more unique and being more beautiful and being more, special. And that comes at a price when you come to environmental issues. So yes, people are being more aware, but there are two issues with that. One, they kind of get waylaid in the sort of glittery lights. And two, they don't necessarily really know what being more sustainable actually means. And that is the biggest challenge, I would say, that we face, is people don't understand what it is. And that's couples, that is businesses, that's anybody you pass in the street. It's just that people don't get it. People think, for example, if you go and buy a coffee from any independent or any chain, you can get your disposable coffee cup, and they think that's fine because on it says it's compostable. Brilliant. But largely it is commercially compostable, which, if you live in Wales, there is no facility to commercially compost. There are very few facilities in England. And therefore, actually those products end up in the bin because they can't be composted at home, they can't be recycled, none of those things. So actually they are worse. And whilst the retailer or the coffee shop owner or whomsoever thinks they're doing the right thing by ordering compostable packaging, actually where they can't be recycled, they're actually exacerbating the issue, and that is the problem. I was chatting to a florist not so long ago, and she said, "Yeah, no, I'm really sustainable. All of my film that I wrap the flowers in is recyclable." Good, great, brilliant. But I bet you it's not recycled, and actually it's not really good enough, because I bet you still use Oasis, and I bet you still use ribbon, and all of those things that. So fab. Recyclable doesn't mean it will be recycled.
Yeah.
Because as we know, what 9% of what should be recycled actually is. So the rest of it is floating around somewhere.
And do you think that is, so obviously we need to educate couples to what sustainability means and how they can have a sustainable wedding, and breaking it down for them. What does that really mean? Does that mean they have to have a completely plant-based menu? What does that really mean for them? And I mean, we are obviously seeing a lot, both in Wales and over in England. We're seeing businesses starting to become aware of what they can do and the changes they can make. But I think you're right that they really need to be communicating that to couples, and they need to be promoting that in the right way, and, the recyclable nature of some things. Yes, it absolutely could be recycled, but is it being recycled? And is that another form of greenwashing? The business thinks it's doing something right, but actually, is it in the long term? So it's a really, really interesting question. I think we could probably talk for quite some time about it as well.
Yeah. What I would say though is that I did a vlog about it recently. It's that kind of pseudo eco, isn't it? So people think because they're having lots of greenery and maybe some candles, and they're not having loads of flowers, but they're doing it that way. They are maybe having brown paper, on their envelopes, and they think that is it, despite the fact that craft paper was probably cut and whatever in China, shipped over, wrapped in plastic. The lights, they got the little twinkly lights, have probably got batteries that can't do anything with. They would have been cheap, and they would come over from wherever as well, and won't really last the day. You've got the sort of the issue of candles, paraffin candles, letting God knows what into the atmosphere. So whilst people think they're doing the right thing, they really don't. And I think that is absolutely the crux of the issue, is that if you can teach people, or if one can teach people that it doesn't have to look like that to be eco-friendly, but also being eco-friendly, I'm doing the wrong way around. It doesn't have to be, that doesn't necessarily make it eco-friendly. And even if you want to make it eco-friendly, it doesn't have to look like that. So you can still have white paper and it be recycled. You can have seed paper, which is beautiful. You can have natural petals as confetti, dried petals, which are way more beautiful than the kind of nasty bits of paper confetti. You can go and pick wildflowers from somewhere local. You can get greenery from the tree. All of that kind of thing. It can be done, and it can be done really beautifully, and be Instagrammable, and be fabulous in your images. But it's just that extra level of care and sort of understanding. But it requires a bit of investigation, a bit of research, and I think that is the challenge, because the information isn't easily available or readily available out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the problem we're facing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is why we're doing this, because ultimately it's about educating. So everything that we do in terms of certainly on Green Manatee side, in terms of the the blog posts that we put out, and every product that we will bring to market, we will explain why that one's better. So I've got umpteen rants about balloons and you know, whatever it is, you know, I'll give you my kind of open view about where they work, where they don't work, why they don't work. And a lot of those things people haven't even realised or you know, or even understood, because as you say, it's the greenwashing. And the greenwashing doesn't necessarily come because the companies or the businesses are actively trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. Sometimes they don't realise, and they're putting things out saying, oh, this is, you know, this is all recycled, or is it? And when they look back at it, your comms team hasn't necessarily matched up with your product development team or your packaging team or whatever. And so the problem is, you know, it's systemic, isn't it?
So I was going to ask you about whether or not you think there are enough suppliers in Wales working sustainably and advocating the message of sustainability. From what you've said so far, I would guess at the answer being no. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and, you know, what type of suppliers you may have come across, and if there's a change coming, and if you're sort of on your consultant side, if you're seeing more venues wanting to become more sustainable. That'd be quite interesting to know what you're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, the simple answer is no. They are not. I don't think, to be fair though, that's not just in Wales. You know, they're no better or worse than anyone else. I think the education is the biggest challenge, as you know, as I've said. I do feel that sometimes it takes longer for stuff to filter. Oh gosh, the rain is just launching down, so apologies, it's a bit noisy in the background. Typical good old Welsh weather. Yeah, I think the challenge is the education. Things take longer to filter out here. What is available from, you know what it's like with wedding trends. They come from the States, they come over, they kind of land in London, and then they take a little while to filter out. And they seem to take a really long time to filter out here. I think we're probably similar to sort of Cornwall and, you know, all the sort of further reaches, but you seem to get to the Severn Bridge and then there's a bigger wall there. But yes, so yes, it is slower probably to change here. I think that is led by lack of awareness and lack of understanding from couples about what they want. There's less demand, but that is I mean, ultimately, your supplier 9 times out of 10 is going to be driven by what they're being, you know, what's being asked of them. And so if people aren't asking for it, they don't think they want it. But often they're not asking for it because they A, assume it's already in place, they B, don't know that they need to ask those questions, and C, they haven't kind of come across themselves. So, you know, there's so many reasons for that. But yes, it is changing. So I think florists are I mean, obviously I just gave that example of that side. There are a group, and they're going to kill me because I've forgotten what the acronym is, but basically they purely source their flowers locally. So everything is sourced in this country. It is, you know, they don't pull over from abroad, and that, and they don't use plastics. So there's definitely an increase in that. Ultimately, one of the biggest challenges one of the biggest areas of kind of carbon footprint creation in a wedding is twofold, isn't it? It's catering and transport. Transport is going to depend on where your guests are coming from, so that's always a challenge. We're better off, I think, than a lot of other countries where people generally fly quite a lot, so we're a lot lower in that respect. But catering, therefore, is the one area that certainly I feel I can influence, and is a big issue. And if you ask me if caterers are wise to that side of things and being more eco-friendly and more sustainable, absolutely not. No, they're really not. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, and I'm finding it a challenge, which is why we did it. You know, this is why we set up this catering company. But I'm definitely finding it a challenge in the supply chain, every element of what they do. There's a lot of stuff that you have to keep heated. There's a lot of, you know, it's where does your food come from? Where do your ingredients come from? Can you source locally? Can you source, you know, seasonally? And definitely there's an increase in looking at seasonal menus and that kind of thing. But if somebody wants something and they can't get it, they expect you to find it from somewhere else. Whereas we have a caveat that we will always, our menus will not be set in stone, because they will always deviate depending on what's available locally. Or seasonally. And, you know, where's your meat coming from? Where's your fish coming from? All of those elements. So it needs to be better, much better.
Do you think that barrier is because of it not being as commercial? So do you feel as though, particularly with catering, that it costs more to be sustainable? Or is it just about, it might not cost more in the product, in the ingredients, or in putting it together, but actually the cost sits in the time of finding those suppliers and putting that supply chain in place and researching, which would mean that, you know, once you've done it once, obviously you need to continually revisit it, but actually the hard work is at the beginning? Or is it that you think it, because they're worried about the profitability of being more sustainable?
Yes to all of those things. I mean, ultimately, I do feel there's a very real, we've always done it like this way, and I think that is, yeah, I think that's kind of built in. So, well, that's how we do it. That's how, you know, chefs, we've always done this and then wrapped it in cling film, and we've always done that, and then we've always, you know, we've always left the water running overnight to keep the potatoes sort of ready. Do you know what I mean? They've been peeled the night before, they've got to stay damp, we'll keep the water running all night. What the hell? You know, it's just, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's mental. And I'm not saying that's the same for everybody. I think people are becoming more aware, especially the good caterers are becoming more aware about where their food comes from. So where does their fish come from? Where does their meat come from? And there are some really good caterers in that respect. But in the main, the practices they employ are largely because that's how we've always done it. That works. Why, if it ain't broke, because they don't see it's broken. Yeah. They don't see it's broken, so they don't see a need to change it. And it's only, I think, when you come in, I haven't come in as a caterer. I don't, God, you would never want me to do the cooking. You really wouldn't. But that's not my, my business partner, bless him, is constantly going, Zoe, I need to do this, but I was going to use cling film. Well, you can't use cling film. So then it would be a case of, you know, and that's not how he's been brought up, if you like. So constantly we're revisiting it and looking and chipping away, and we do not get it right all the time. And I'm not, I'd be lying if I said we did, but we're trying. And every decision we make, whereas before every decision would have been the profitability, you know, source, supply, all of that, the sustainability element is key to all of those decisions, and it is crucial. And yes, you do take a hit on profits, certainly initially, while you're getting that in place. The packaging does cost more, you know, but then that's because not enough people are doing it. And as and when that change happens and more people are sort of asking those questions and putting those demands on their supply chain, those things will become, it's the same with retailers, isn't it? It's the same across the board. You know, once more people demand, once people start shopping elsewhere with their pound, then that will drive change, but it comes back to that education bit. And someone's got to take a stand. And I think that there are enough of us who are prepared to stand up and say, look, I will accept that I might have to take a short-term hit on profits in order to do the right thing, but I guarantee if I do that, the benefits will come, because actually people do want a more sustainable wedding caterer, and they do want more sustainable, you know, supply. You know, you want to go to a restaurant and know that the food is where it's come from, and so all of those things. And I think it's just chipping away and chipping away and chipping away.
So I was going to ask you about what you think the biggest challenge is, but I think from listening to you, it certainly sounds that the education piece for both businesses and also couples is really important, and just really clearly getting the message out there of what sustainability means and what sustainable weddings look like, and how to make those really small but quite significant changes. And, you know, we talk a lot to businesses about, you know, doing something imperfect right now is so much better than waiting for the perfect solution later
Absolutely.
down the
Because
line.
there's never going to be a perfect solution, is there? It's never going to be like that. Because if it was, we'd all be living in caves and, you know, eating what we trapped, you know, on the way past. But life isn't like that. And I think that that's okay. But if we're going to take, we've got to give back. And it's got to be a continual process like that. And that is what will work. And we can still have fun, and we can still celebrate, and it can still be beautiful, and we can still have really lovely food. And if you want to eat meat, you can still eat meat. I'm not telling everyone, God, I love it for everyone. I mean, I've been vegan for a couple of years, and I think the opportunities for plant-based food are incredible. And I think that quite often people say, "Oh, I don't want that," because my parents were a prime example. "Oh no, I don't like that. That'll be horrible." It isn't horrible because you don't know, but that's exactly what you've been eating for the last bit. Just because your coleslaw or mayo doesn't say vegan, it doesn't mean it isn't vegan. And actually, put those things as your base so that you reduce your waste, and then you just put really good quality meat on top, or really good quality fish on top. And that's okay. I'm not going to tell you you can't eat meat, but maybe don't eat it as often, and maybe think about what goes with it. And maybe if you're catering for a large number of people, you reduce the variations so that everyone can eat largely the same, and then you just give a little bit of difference to, you know, to individual plates, whatever. And then that way you will be it's incredible, just making some more conscious choices with your food decisions, how much you can bring down the price of your catered event, but also you stop that kind of food envy. I hate, more than anything, I hate when the meat eater has this fabulous meal and the vegan gets this kind of pretty naff looking risotto, and you can see they're looking and thinking, why not? What's this? And it's not good enough. There's no reason for it. And from an environmental point of view, there's no justification. You could have done something absolutely fabulous and not cost you any more. And yeah, I think that is where it is, and that's where we need to be getting to.
So my last question to you, and I'm sure you could give so many tips, but if there is a couple watching this that are thinking about having a sustainable wedding, maybe they're quite conscious in the way they live their lives, but aren't quite sure what it means to have a sustainable wedding, what is the first thing that they should do when thinking about maybe choosing a caterer or a venue? What's the questions that they should be asking?
So I think there are, I'm going to give you two things. Sorry, it's not the brief. I'm going to give you two things because I genuinely think that these two elements cover pretty much anything or anywhere and everything. So the first thing I would say is think very carefully about your food, because your food is one of the biggest, as we've discussed, one of the biggest carbon footprint elements, if you like, or one of the biggest sort of wasteful elements in terms of carbon, but also in terms of everything for your wedding. So I'm not asking you to go plant-based, but if you could maybe go plant-based for the majority, so maybe have a plant-based starter, maybe even a plant-based dessert. You'd be amazed how amazing, awesome chocolate cakes are plant-based. And then just have maybe meat if you want to, but the base be the same for everybody, and then you just give them, you know, think very carefully about your food and don't try and do everything, and don't over cater, because that is the biggest cause of waste ever. So food is one thing. Really, really think carefully about your wedding food. And the other thing I would say is less is more. So you do not have to have everything in the room. You don't have to have, you know, sort of favours for everyone, plus loads of other things, plus confetti, plus games, plus this, plus that, plus an extra drink, plus you know, massive centerpieces, plus bouncy castles and dove releases and magicians and Christ knows what else. Be realistic about what your guests will see in a day. There's only so much they can take in, and I can guarantee, having done weddings, I've done over 200 weddings, you know, every kind of wedding I've done, I would say that the people remember, what people take from a wedding, what they really remember is really good food, there being enough alcohol, good music to dance to on the days that we were able to do that again, and the speeches, actually, something memorable. What they don't remember is what colour the flowers were. Now, I know that's important for the couple and, well, for the bride quite often in terms of the colour scheme, and that's which will never, I get all of that, but the guests largely won't remember that. They won't remember all the peripheral stuff. They probably won't even see it because the day goes quite quick. So less is more. Just have a couple of really beautiful things and think those through and put it all together so that you have something that you know you haven't wasted money, wasted resources, bought in a load of tat that is gonna go. So just think through. Yeah, food, less is more.
That is brilliant.
In a very big nutshell.
That is brilliant. Zoe, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really interesting to hear your insights on what's happening over the border and how everybody's feeling and thinking. And what I would just want to say to everybody is that, you know, Zoe and I have talked a lot about education is key, and we really want to get the message out there and communicate to everybody that sustainable weddings are possible, they are commercially viable, and small steps can really make big changes. We will put a link in the post below, in the comments below, for you to go and read Zoe's blog posts. They're fantastic, get a really good insight to everything she's been doing, and also to the Sustainable Wedding Alliance and our Conscious Couples blog posts. So if you're a couple watching and you're not quite sure what to do, then do jump over to our blog and have a check out of some of our members, just like Zoe, that have written pieces for us about their industries. So thank you very much.
As well, I'd always be happy to answer questions on social media or whatever. Drop us a message. I'm, you know, more than happy to help if I can.
I'll put Zoe's details below as well, so feel free to get in touch with her. Thank you very much.